Okay, breaking overnight a massive, absolutely relentless aerial attack across Ukraine. We're talking nearly 600 drones, dozens of missiles over 12 hours. This feels different.
It really does. The scale is staggering, one of the biggest in months, hitting targets from Kiev deep into multiple regions. It's triggered this immediate chain reaction, not just inside Ukraine, but right up to NATO's borders.
Jets scrambled, air defenses on high alert. It's like a switch has been flipped. What is actually going on?
That's exactly what we need to figure out. Welcome to The Military Point, your ultimate source for sharp insights, analysis, and updates covering today's most important topics.
Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to know. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more updates.
Okay, so normally we ease into these things, look at the background, the trends.
I just set the stage.
Yeah, but this source material, it just throws us right into the deep end. The sheer intensity, the human cost we have to start right there.
No kidding. So, our mission today, cut through the noise. What actually happened during this 12-hour barrage? What are Kiev and Moscow saying, and why are their stories so different? And crucially, how is this spilling over, putting NATO on edge?
Let's unpack this, starting with the raw scale of it all.
12 hours, nearly 600 drones, dozens of missiles. That's almost industrial-level bombardment.
It is. The sources confirm this is one of the heaviest waves we've seen recently. And it wasn't focused on one spot. Reports say at least 7 regions were hit simultaneously. Comprehensive is the word.
And the impact in Kiev sounds particularly devastating. President Zelensky confirmed deaths, including a child.
Yeah, at least 4 people killed in the capital. Tragically, one was a 12-year-old girl. And the targets, well, this is where it gets really disturbing.
It's not just military infrastructure.
Not according to Kiev. They confirmed a direct hit on the Institute of Cardiology. A nurse and a patient were killed there. I mean, a heart hospital.
A heart hospital? That doesn't sound like a purely military target. What else?
Zelensky also listed a large bakery, an automobile, rubber factory, okay, maybe industrial, but also apartment buildings, other civilian infrastructure. It paints a grim picture.
It really does. If you're hitting bakeries and hospitals alongside factories, it starts to feel less like strategic strikes and more like, well, terror bombing, trying to break morale.
That seems to be a key part of the analysis, yes. It aims to disrupt daily life, drain resources on repairs, instill fear. And this wasn't just Kiev.
Right, you said 7 regions. What about elsewhere?
Zaporizhia saw significant casualties too. 34 people injured, and again, children caught in the middle. 3 of them, ages 11, 12, and 9.
Oh, man. The details from the governor there were hard to read. One boy with carbon monoxide poisoning, another caught in an explosion. Both serious.
Yes, both reported in serious condition, and then a confirmed death in Sumy, a 59-year-old man. So the impact was definitely widespread, and civilians were clearly in the line of fire.
What's really strange, though, is this pattern you mentioned. These attacks aren't always surprises.
Well, for Ukrainians living through this, it's described almost as a grim routine. These big barrages often kick off late on Saturday nights. Sirens around 10 p.m. GMT. Predictable. In a terrifying way.
So if it's predictable, what does that tell us strategically? You lose the element of surprise, so what's the goal? Maximum psychological dread. Hitting people at home, trying to rest.
That seems to be the thinking, yeah. It maximizes the disruption, forces people into shelters during their downtime. It's a kind of grinding pressure, maybe aimed at wearing down the national will through this constant, almost scheduled fear.
Okay, so this intense attack happens, this pattern continues. What's the immediate political fallout? Zelensky's response must have been strong.
Extremely strong. He called it vile, obviously condemned it, and said it shows Moscow wants to continue fighting and killing. Pretty blunt.
But he didn't just condemn, did he? There was talk of retaliation.
Yes, that was key.
Right.
He vowed Ukraine will strike back. But the interesting part was the reason he gave, specifically to force diplomacy from Russia.
Force diplomacy. That's a really specific phrase. Does that mean hitting back militarily to make talks happen? Or hitting targets inside Russia to create leverage?
The implication, reading between the lines of the sources, leans towards the latter. It's framing Ukrainian strikes not just as self-defense, but as a tool, a lever, to inflict enough pain on Russia that they have to negotiate seriously.
And the timing, Zelensky made a point about the UN General Assembly wrapping up, didn't he?
He did. He called it a dastardly attack, timed deliberately to send a message right after that international gathering, essentially arguing Russia was signaling, we're not interested in your diplomacy, only ours on our terms.
Okay, so that's Kyiv's narrative. A terror campaign timed for political effect, requiring a forceful response. What's the official line for Moscow?
Complete contrast. Foreign Minister Lavrov stated very clearly that Russia only struck military facilities and industries supporting Ukraine's military. Full stop.
So one side says hospitals and bakeries, the other says arms depots. A total disconnect.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. How do these clashing stories play out internationally? Because this didn't just stay within Ukraine's borders, did it? It immediately started pulling in NATO.
Right. Zelensky warned about this, saying Russia is actively testing European air defenses. That sounds like a direct challenge.
And we saw NATO react almost instantly. Polish jets were scrambled early Sunday morning. This was happening as the Russian missiles were hitting western Ukraine, close to their border.
But the Poles said this scrambling is becoming routine.
That's the crucial part. They described it as preventative, yes, but also routine. That word signals a massive shift. It's basically standard practice now, especially since that incident a few weeks back where NATO planes helped shoot down Russian drones in their airspace.
So the eastern flank is basically on a constant low-level alert footing now.
Seems like it. And it's not just Poland. Denmark reported drones over the military sites for the second night running, caused actual disruption to air traffic.
Did they blame Russia directly for the Danish drones?
Officially, Danish officials said they had no evidence linking them to Russia, and Moscow denied it. But the timing, the location over military sites, it definitely raises tensions regardless of proof, creates that insecurity.
And weren't there other accusations too? Estonia, Romania?
Yep, both have also accused Russia of airspace violations recently. So you see this pattern of pressure, probing, right along NATO's edge. It's forcing a response beyond just scrambling jets.
What kind of response? What are they actually doing?
Well, the big concrete step announced is in the Baltic Sea. NATO plans to boost surveillance there, and this is significant station at least one air defense frigate.
An air defense frigate. That's not just watching. That's putting serious hardware, serious anti-air capability right into a contested sea.
Exactly. It's a clear signal, moving from passive monitoring to active physical deterrence, putting out a marker.
Okay, so physical defenses are hardening in Europe. What about the political dimension, particularly from the U.S.? Has this changed anything in Washington?
It seems to have coincided with a shift, yeah.
The U.S. president, for the first time apparently, stated he believes Ukraine could actually retake lost territory.
What was his reasoning for that sudden optimism?
He pointed directly at the Russian economy, saying it's flagging under the pressure of sanctions and the long war effort. And there's this noted frustration, with the Kremlin just refusing to engage in real peace talks.
And Zelensky is jumping on that, I assume, pushing for even tougher sanctions.
Absolutely. He publicly backed the U.S. president's talk of potentially harsher sanctions, and he's still hammering that message to Europe. Cut off the Russian oil and gas money that funds these attacks.
But didn't the U.S. statements go even further? Something really provocative?
Yes. The most striking line was the U.S. president reportedly suggesting NATO nations should actually shoot down Russian planes if they violate their airspace.
Whoa. Okay, shoot down Russian planes. That's a whole different level. That moves way beyond scrambling jets or stationing a frigate. That's direct confrontation. It's a massive potential escalation. If any NATO country actually adopted that as policy, it could trigger, well, anything. It creates this really dangerous possibility of miscalculation.
Especially when you pair it with Russia's warnings. Lavrov said they don't intend to attack NATO, but...
But he immediately followed up, warning of a decisive response to any aggression aimed at Moscow. So the U.S. suggests a red line. Russia immediately draws its own in response. It's a very tense feedback loop.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. Inside Ukraine, you've got these massive, brutal strikes hitting civilian targets, seemingly designed for psychological impact.
Yeah.
That pressure cooker environment.
Right. Then externally, you have NATO countries moving from reacting to incidents to making high alert responses routine, putting advanced ships in place, hardening the border.
And layered on top of that, this intensifying diplomatic fight, threats of much harsher sanctions, calls to cut off energy money, and now this explosive U.S. suggestion about actually shooting down Russian aircraft over NATO territory.
It's a collision course, isn't it?
Yeah.
Internal pressure meeting external escalation.
So the final thought here, the really provocative question this leaves us with. Given everything we've seen, the specific targeting of civilian sites like that Heart Institute, NATO moving warships into the Baltic, what's the actual threshold now?
Exactly. What would it take another drone shot down over Poland? A deliberate strike on NATO soil, confirmed. Something even more blatant. What specific event pushes NATO from these routine preventative actions into active kinetic engagement, especially with Washington floating ideas like shooting down planes.
What signal should you, the listener, be watching for next? What tells us we've crossed that line from deterrence into something much more direct and dangerous?
That's the critical unknown everyone is watching right now. That threshold.
That is the line, and we have to keep monitoring the sources closely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material.
You've been listening to The Military Point. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.